I stood in the conference room as Brandon Kowalski, the new director of operations, slid a termination letter across the table. "Effective immediately," he said with cold satisfaction. "Hand over all system credentials, documentation, and access codes." I looked at the letter, then at Brandon's smug face, then at my CEO Harold sitting silently in the corner. I smiled slowly. "I'm afraid I cannot do that," I said calmly. Brandon's face reddened. "Excuse me," I leaned back. "The core system you rely on? I own it." The silence in that room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Brandon's jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscles twitching beneath his skin. Harold, my boss of 6 years, the man I had trusted completely, looked down at his hands. He would not meet my eyes. Let me back up, because this moment did not come out of nowhere. This was 6 years in the making. I was 28 years old when I built CoreLink. Not for Meridian Supply Solutions, not for any company. I built it for myself, on my own time, with my own equipment, using savings I had scraped together from years of freelance software architecture work. I spent 2 full years developing that system. It was revolutionary, at least in my world. CoreLink integrated everything a mid-sized distribution company needed: inventory management, logistics coordination, customer relations, financial tracking, all in one seamless platform. Every line of code was mine, every algorithm, every interface, every security protocol. I documented everything meticulously. I registered the copyrights. I filed for patents. CoreLink belonged to me, entirely and completely. At the time, I had no grand plans for it. I was just tired of watching companies struggle with 5 different incompatible systems that talked to each other like strangers at a bad party. I wanted to build something better, something elegant, something that actually worked. That was when Harold found me. Meridian Supply Solutions was a mid-sized wholesale distribution company in Phoenix, Arizona. 350 employees. Annual revenue of about $75 million. They moved everything from industrial hardware to restaurant supplies across the southwestern United States. Harold Brennan had founded the company 30 years earlier, built it from a single warehouse into a regional powerhouse. But by the time I met him, Meridian was struggling. Their systems were outdated, cobbled together from different decades of technology. Orders got lost. Inventory counts were wrong. Customers were frustrated. Efficiency was terrible. Harold knew he needed to modernize, but he did not know how. A mutual contact connected us. Harold and I met at a coffee shop in Scottsdale on a Tuesday morning in March. He was 62 then, with gray hair and tired eyes, but when he talked about his company, you could see the passion underneath the exhaustion. He had built something real, something that mattered to people. He just needed help bringing it into the modern era. I listened to his problems and realized CoreLink could solve most of them. But I had learned enough about business by then to protect myself. I did not offer to sell him CoreLink. I offered to license it. The contract was crystal clear. I retained all ownership and intellectual property rights to CoreLink. Meridian would pay me monthly licensing fees for the right to use the system, plus a salary as their head of systems integration. I would customize CoreLink for their specific needs, train their staff, and maintain the system. But the core architecture, the fundamental code, the patents, the copyrights, all of that stayed mine. Harold agreed immediately. We both hired attorneys to review the contract. We went through 3 drafts, making sure every detail was airtight. Both lawyers signed off. Harold signed. I signed. We shook hands. I threw myself into that work. Within the first year, I integrated CoreLink into every department at Meridian. I built custom modules for their unique workflows. I trained people personally, making sure everyone understood not just how to use the system, but why it worked the way it did. The results were dramatic. Efficiency increased 43% in the first year. Error rates dropped 78%. Customer satisfaction scores went from 62% to 91%. Revenue climbed to $90 million, then $110 million. Harold was thrilled. He gave me raises. He expanded my team. Within 3 years, I had 12 people working under me, all of them hand-picked, all of them excellent. I was proud of what we built together. I loved my team. I loved watching the company thrive. I even loved the challenge of constantly improving CoreLink, adapting it, making it better. For 6 years, it was exactly the kind of work I had always wanted to do: meaningful, challenging, collaborative, respected. Then Brandon Kowalski arrived. That was 3 months ago. Harold hired him as director of operations. Brandon came from a military background, 20 years in the Army, logistics management. Harold said he wanted stronger leadership and corporate discipline. I remember feeling uneasy the first time I met Brandon. He had this way of looking at you like he was assessing a threat. Everything was hierarchy and chain of command and metrics. There was no room for conversation, only orders. Within his first week, Brandon made it clear he did not like my setup. I reported directly to Harold, not through Brandon. That bothered him. My team operated with a lot of autonomy. That bothered him. People came to me with problems instead of going through proper channels. That really bothered him. He started documenting concerns about my attitude. I was too casual with subordinates. I questioned decisions instead of following directives. I resisted implementing his new reporting structures. None of it was true. Not really. I collaborated with my team because that made us effective. I asked questions because understanding the why behind decisions made me better at my job. I pushed back on needless bureaucracy because it slowed us down without adding value. But Brandon saw all of that as insubordination. The tension built over 3 months. Small conflicts, passive-aggressive emails, meetings where Brandon talked over me. I tried to stay professional. I tried to work with him. But I could feel something shifting. Harold started avoiding me. He looked tired all the time, distracted. When I tried to talk to him about the friction with Brandon, he brushed it off. "Just give him time to settle in," he said. "You two will find your rhythm." We did not find our rhythm. And then came that Tuesday morning. Harold's assistant called me. Emergency meeting in conference room B. When I walked in, Brandon was already there, sitting at the head of the table like he owned it. Harold sat to the side, looking anywhere but at me. That was when Brandon slid the termination letter across the table. "Effective immediately," he said, and there was satisfaction in his voice, barely concealed. "Hand over all system credentials, documentation, and access codes." I read the letter slowly. Termination without cause, 2 weeks severance, immediate surrender of all company property and access, standard corporate language, cold and impersonal, reducing 6 years of my life to 3 paragraphs on company letterhead. I looked up at Brandon, then at Harold. Harold's face was pale, his jaw tight, but he said nothing. That was when I smiled. "I'm afraid I cannot do that," I said calmly. Brandon's face reddened. "Excuse me, the core system you rely on," I said, keeping my voice level and clear. "CoreLink, I own it." Brandon laughed. Actually laughed. "Company policy requires all systems to be company property. You developed it on company time, using company resources. It belongs to Meridian." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. I had started carrying it with me 2 weeks earlier, when I sensed something was coming. Inside was my contract with Meridian, the licensing agreement, copyright documentation, patent filings. I laid them on the table. "I developed CoreLink 2 years before I ever met Harold," I said. "On my own time, my own equipment, my own money. I licensed it to Meridian under a contract that explicitly states I retain all ownership and intellectual property rights. You can see right here, on page 4, section 7. Both parties signed it. Harold's attorney reviewed it. My attorney reviewed it. It has been in effect for 6 years, during which Meridian has paid me monthly licensing fees through my LLC." I slid the documents toward Brandon. He picked them up, his face going from red to white as he read. I saw his throat move as he swallowed hard. "This cannot be valid," he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "It is absolutely valid," I replied. 3 law firms have reviewed that contract over the years. It has been audited. It has been referenced in Meridian's financial statements. It is airtight. Brandon looked at Harold. "Did you know about this?" Harold finally met my eyes, and what I saw there made my stomach drop. Guilt. He had known. Of course he had known. He signed the contract. We need to discuss this privately, Harold said quietly. There is nothing to discuss, I said. You can fire me. That is your right. But CoreLink does not belong to Meridian. It never has. And I am not handing over credentials to a system I own. Brandon stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is not over, he said, and stormed out of the room. I looked at Harold. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I am sorry, he finally said, so quietly I almost did not hear him. But he did not take it back. He did not stop what was happening. He just sat there, looking sorry, while my world fell apart. Security arrived 15 minutes later. Marcus, the head of building security, looked miserable as he escorted me back to my office. I am sorry, Cassie, he said quietly. I do not want to do this. I know. I told him, you are just doing your job. My badge was deactivated. They took my laptop, my phone, anything with company property stickers. I was allowed 1 box for personal items, 15 minutes to clear out my office. As I packed up the photos from my desk, the coffee mug my team gave me last Christmas, the small, succulent plant I had managed to keep alive for 3 years, I could see my team watching through the glass walls. Jason, my deputy, looked stricken. Sarah, who had transferred from our Salt Lake facility just to work with me, had tears in her eyes. I wanted to tell them it would be okay, but I could not find the words. Brandon appeared in the doorway as I was taping up the box. You have 10 minutes, he said. I have 15, Marcus told me. Well, I am telling you 10. I looked at him for a long moment. Why do you hate me so much? He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I do not hate you. I just do not appreciate employees who think they are above the system. I never thought I was above anything. I just built something valuable and protected it. We will see how valuable it is, he said, and walked away. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, hands shaking. Not from fear, from anger, from betrayal. I had given Meridian 6 years of my life. I had built them from chaos into efficiency. I had trained their people, solved their problems, worked weekends and holidays to make sure everything ran smoothly. And they threw me out like garbage. My phone rang. Emma, my best friend since college, who worked in HR at a tech company across town. I'd just heard, she said. Ryan's friend works at Meridian. The news is spreading. Are you okay? I do not know, I said honestly. I do not know what I am. Come over, we will figure this out. But first, I called my attorney. Patricia Summers had handled my contract negotiations 6 years ago. She was sharp, experienced, and did not mess around. They can fire you, she said after I explained everything. Employment at will. But they cannot take CoreLink. Your contract is bulletproof. If they try to use the system without paying licensing fees, that is theft. If they try to reverse engineer it, that is intellectual property violation. You are completely protected legally. Then why do I feel so scared? Because you are human, Patricia said. And because companies sometimes find ways to make things difficult even when they are legally in the wrong. Document everything. Every interaction, every email, every phone call. And Cassie, prepare for a long battle. They are not going to let this go easily. She was right. The first day without me, CoreLink ran normally. It was automated after all, designed to handle routine operations without constant supervision. But by day 2, small issues started appearing. A routine update was due. Inventory sync showed minor errors. The customer portal had a glitch that normally I would have fixed in 10 minutes. Nothing critical yet, but the cracks were beginning to show. Jason called me that evening, using his personal phone. Brandon held an emergency meeting, he said, his voice tight with stress. Announced you are gone. He is in charge of all systems now. He demanded we give him complete system access. What did you tell him? The truth. We have operational access, but not architecture-level control. He lost it, Cassie. Started yelling about insubordination and IT incompetence. Then he brought in some outside consultant, guy named Gerald Finch, paying him $12,000 for a 3-day assessment. My chest tightened. Jason, listen to me carefully. CoreLink has layered authentication. Without my master credentials, They can see the code, but they cannot modify the core architecture. Any forced changes will trigger security lockouts. What happens then? The system enters safe mode and stops processing new data. Everything freezes. Jason was quiet for a moment. How long before that happens? Depends on how aggressively they try to break in. Could be days, could be hours. Brandon will blame us. Probably. I am sorry you are caught in the middle of this. This is not your fault, Jason said firmly. You built something amazing and protected it. That is exactly what you should have done. But I could hear the worry in his voice. He had a mortgage, a family. He could not afford to lose his job because of my fight with Brandon. Day 2 turned into day 3. Gerald, the consultant, examined CoreLink's code. I heard through Jason that Gerald told Brandon the system was impressively complex, but that he could see what it did without understanding how to replicate or modify core functions. He recommended they negotiate with me. Brandon exploded, refused, ordered Gerald to keep trying. The pressure on my former team increased. Brandon held daily meetings, demanding progress, threatening consequences for failure. I spent those days at home, anxious and restless. I reviewed my contract again and again with Patricia. Everything was airtight. I had done everything right. But doing everything right does not always protect you from people determined to do wrong. Then came day 3. Gerald attempted what he called a workaround. He tried to create a bypass in the authentication layer, a backdoor that would give them control without my credentials. CoreLink's security protocol activated immediately. The system recognized an unauthorized access attempt and locked down all non-essential functions. Orders stopped processing smoothly. Customer service got flooded with calls. Warehouse operations slowed to a crawl. Jason called me, panicked. It is falling apart. Brandon is screaming at everyone. He is threatening to fire the whole IT department. Let me talk to him, I said. He refuses. He has forbidden anyone from contacting you. Jason, the system is protecting itself. It is doing exactly what I designed it to do. The only way to restore full function is with my master credentials. He will never ask you. His ego would not allow it. Jason was right. Brandon would rather watch Meridian burn than admit he needed me. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about my team, about the company, about all the employees who had nothing to do with this fight but would suffer for it. I thought about the customers, the small business owners who relied on Meridian to supply their restaurants and shops and hotels. None of them deserved this. But I also thought about what Patricia said. If I caved now, if I handed over CoreLink just to make things easier, I would lose everything. My leverage, my ownership, my future. Brandon would win. Harold would get away with betraying me, and I would be left with nothing but the memory of what I built. I could not let that happen. By the end of the first week, Meridian was in chaos. Orders were backed up. Customers were threatening to cancel contracts. Employee morale was destroyed. And Brandon was getting increasingly desperate and violent in his responses, calling more meetings, blaming more people, threatening more consequences. But something else was happening too. Something I did not know about yet. Emma's husband, Ryan, worked in commercial real estate. He heard something at an industry lunch, a casual comment about Meridian being acquired. He mentioned it to Emma. Emma called me immediately. Are you sure? I asked. Ryan is sure. He heard it from 2 different sources. There is a deal in progress. I started digging. Nothing showed up in public records. No announcements, no filings. But the rumor persisted. I called a few contacts in the Phoenix business community. Everyone had heard whispers. Something was happening. That was when I made a decision that changed everything. I used my savings to hire a private investigator. Denise Crawford was a former corporate investigator with contacts throughout the business world. I gave her everything I knew. Within 48 hours, she called me back. Titan Logistics, she said. They are acquiring Meridian. Purchase price is $26 million. The sale closes in 10 days. My blood ran cold. 10 days. There is more, Denise said. Brandon Kowalski is not just the director of operations. He is Titan's plant. They sent him to prepare Meridian for acquisition. He was supposed to streamline operations, reduce headcount, make the company look more profitable for the sale. And I was in the way. You were definitely in the way, But it got worse. Denise uncovered documents from Titan's due diligence process. Brandon had told them that all systems and technology were company-owned assets. The due diligence report listed CoreLink as proprietary Meridian technology. Titan's CEO, Walter Gaines, believed he was buying a turnkey operation with fully owned, cutting-edge technology. He had no idea CoreLink was licensed, not owned. That I held all the intellectual property rights. That the core system powering Meridian's entire operation could not be transferred without my consent. Brandon had lied. To Titan, to Harold, probably to everyone. And he was about to close a $26 million deal based on that lie. Brandon himself would get a $2 million bonus when the sale closed. Harold would get his retirement payout. Brandon would become regional VP of Titan's Southwestern Division. They were all going to profit from my work, my system, my intellectual property. And they were committing fraud to do it. I sat in my living room with Denise's report spread across my coffee table and felt something shift inside me. This was not just about me being fired anymore. This was about deliberate deception on a massive scale. Innocent people were being cheated. Titan was being defrauded. Meridian's employees had no idea their company was being sold based on false information. Someone had to stop it. And I was the only one who could. I spent one sleepless night weighing my options. I could let the sale happen and watch it explode afterward when Titan discovered the truth. That would hurt Brandon, hurt Harold, maybe even result in criminal charges. But it would also devastate Meridian's employees, Titan's shareholders, everyone caught in the blast radius. Or I could stay silent, walk away, let them have their fraud, their profits, their lies, keep my head down and just move on with my life. But my conscience would not let me do that. Neither would my sense of justice. What they were doing was wrong, not just to me, but to everyone involved. I called Titan Logistics. The receptionist at their Denver headquarters was polite but skeptical when I asked for Walter Gaines. Mr. Gaines is in meetings all day. Can I take a message? Tell him it is about the Meridian acquisition, I said. Tell him there is something in the due diligence report that is materially false. Tell him I have proof. She put me on hold. 2 minutes later, she came back. Mr. Gaines would like your name and number. He will call you back within the hour. He called back in 40 minutes. This is Walter Gaines, he said, his voice direct and no nonsense. Who am I speaking with? My name is Cassie Reynolds. I was the head of systems integration at Meridian until I was fired 8 days ago. I am calling about CoreLink, the operations management system that powers everything Meridian does. I am listening. I took a deep breath. Your due diligence report lists CoreLink as a proprietary Meridian asset. It is not. I own CoreLink. I licensed it to Meridian under a contract that explicitly retains all intellectual property rights with me. Meridian does not own the system. They cannot transfer it. And Brandon Kowalski knew that when he represented it as company property. Silence. Long enough that I thought the call might have dropped. Then Walter said, "Send me the documentation." I emailed him everything. My original development records, copyright filings, patent documentation, the licensing contract with Meridian, 6 years of licensing fee payments to my LLC. Everything that proved CoreLink was mine. 20 minutes later, Walter called back. Are you telling me we are paying $26 million for a company whose core operating system we will not actually own? That is exactly what I am telling you. And Brandon Kowalski knew this. He found out when he fired me. I showed him the contract. He has known for over a week. I heard papers rustling, voices in the background. Then Walter said, "Thank you for this call, Miss Reynolds. I need to make some other calls now." He hung up. I sat there, heart pounding. I had just torpedoed a $26 million deal. I had probably destroyed Brandon's career. I had definitely complicated Harold's retirement. And I had no idea what would happen next. What happened next was Walter Gaines flew to Phoenix with 3 attorneys and his VP of operations. They arrived at Meridian the following morning, unannounced. I know this because Jason called me, whispering from a supply closet. There are suits everywhere, big guys from Denver. They are demanding to see Harold and Brandon. Everyone is freaking out. Stay out of it, I told him. This is not about you. But I could not stay away. I got in my car and drove to Meridian. I parked across the street, watching the entrance. 2 hours later, I saw Brandon leave the building, escorted by security. His face was gray. He did not look like a man about to get a $2 million bonus. He looked like a man whose world had just collapsed. My phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Reynolds? This is Walter Gaines. I understand you are in the parking lot. Would you mind coming inside? I would like to speak with you. I walked into that building for the first time since being escorted out. Marcus was at the security desk. He smiled when he saw me, a real smile. Good to see you, Cassie. Walter Gaines was in the conference room where I had been fired, flanked by his attorneys. Harold sat at the far end of the table, looking 10 years older than he had a week ago. Brandon was nowhere to be seen. Miss Reynolds, Walter said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was firm. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Walter gestured to a chair. I sat. He remained standing. Let me summarize where we are, he said. Your documentation is accurate. CoreLink is your intellectual property. Brandon Kowalski deliberately misrepresented that fact to us during due diligence. That constitutes fraud. We are suspending the acquisition pending a full investigation. We are also pursuing legal action against Mr. Kowalski for fraudulent misrepresentation. He looked at Harold. Mr. Brennan has admitted he knew about your licensing agreement and did not correct the record with us. He claims Mr. Kowalski assured him it could be worked out. Harold met my eyes. His face was full of shame. I am sorry, Cassie. I should never have let this happen. You should never have betrayed me in the first place, I said quietly. Walter sat down. Here is what I need to understand. This company is worth nothing without CoreLink. Our entire acquisition strategy was based on Meridian's operational efficiency, which is entirely dependent on your system. So help me understand. What would it take? I had not expected that question. I had expected anger, maybe threats, possibly a lawsuit. I had not expected a pragmatic businessman asking what it would take to make things right. Full public apology from Harold, I said. Brandon terminated immediately with no severance. Harold agrees to sell the company with honest disclosure about all assets, including accurate representation of CoreLink's ownership. I get an equity stake that reflects the real value my system brings to Meridian. My team is protected. No one loses their job because of this. I return as Chief Technology Officer with full authority over all systems, and new licensing terms that actually reflect what CoreLink is worth. Walter nodded. What if Titan still wants to buy Meridian, but on truthful terms? I had not considered that. What would that look like? Smaller purchase price for the company operations themselves. Maybe $8 million. Separate licensing deal with you for CoreLink. 5-year contract, let's say $12 million total, paid annually. You become VP of Technology for Titan's entire southwestern region. You report directly to me, not to whoever replaces Kowalski. Your team stays intact. You build similar systems for our other facilities. I stared at him. $12 million. Over 5 years, that was $2.4 million per year. More than I had made in my entire life. I need to think about it, I said. Fair enough, but think fast. Every day this company operates without a functioning CoreLink costs money. Customers are leaving. Employees are panicking. I need a resolution. I left that meeting and drove straight to Patricia's office. She read through the terms Walter had outlined, made notes, asked questions. This is a good offer, she finally said. More than good. But we can negotiate better terms, better protections. Give me 2 days. Those 2 days felt like 2 years. Meridian continued to deteriorate. More customers left. More systems failed. The news spread through the Phoenix business community. Whispers about fraud, about corporate espionage, about the company that almost got away with selling technology it did not own. And then Brandon made his final, desperate move. It was 11 at night when my phone buzzed with an alert. CoreLink's emergency security system. Someone was attempting to delete core system files. I opened my monitoring app and saw Brandon's credentials accessing the server room, deletion software running, files disappearing. He was trying to destroy the evidence. If CoreLink did not exist, there was no fraud. Just a failed acquisition of a failing company. He could claim I had sabotaged everything out of spite. I immediately locked him out remotely and started restoring from backup. CoreLink had geo-redundant backups in 3 separate secure cloud locations, with automatic versioning every 6 hours. Everything he deleted, I could restore. But that was not enough. I called Patricia. I need the police. Brandon was arrested in Meridian's server room at 11:43 at night. Criminal damage to computer systems is a felony in Arizona. The police seized his laptop, which contained the deletion software. Security cameras showed him entering the server room. Digital logs showed exactly what files he tried to destroy and when. Walter's attorneys added criminal fraud charges to their civil claims. The next morning, I returned to Meridian with my team. We spent 6 hours restoring the system to full function. Operations resumed, orders processed, customers called back. The crisis stabilized. Harold found me in the server room that afternoon. "Can we talk?" he asked. We went to his office, the same office where 6 years earlier we had celebrated CoreLink going fully operational. The same office where he had given me raises and bonuses and told me I was the best hire he had ever made. "I do not expect forgiveness," Harold said. "I do not deserve it. Brandon approached me a year ago, told me about Titan's interest in acquiring Meridian, promised me an easy retirement, a good payout. He made it sound so simple. Streamline operations, reduce overhead, make the company attractive. And when you pushed back on his changes, he convinced me you were the problem, that you were too attached to your systems, too resistant to corporate structure. He made me believe firing you was necessary for the sale to go through." "You knew the contract," I said. "You knew I owned CoreLink." "I did, but Brandon said it could be worked out, that once you were gone and had time to cool off, you would negotiate, that we could offer you a buyout. I convinced myself it would be fine, that you would land on your feet, that this was just business." Harold's voice broke. "But it was not just business. It was betrayal. I betrayed someone who had given me 6 years of loyalty, who had helped save my company, who trusted me completely, and I did it for money and convenience. I looked at this man who had once been my mentor. What now? I am stepping down immediately. Public statement, taking full responsibility. I am acknowledging I betrayed your trust. I will cooperate fully with all investigations. I will not contest any civil claims. Walter can have the company on whatever terms he wants, as long as my employees are protected." He handed me an envelope, my resignation letter, and a personal apology that I hope someday you will be able to read without hating me. I took the envelope but did not open it. "I do not hate you, Harold. I am just incredibly disappointed." "That is worse," he said quietly. He left. I sat in his office alone for a while, holding that envelope, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. 2 days later, I signed a contract with Walter Gaines. Patricia had negotiated even better terms. Titan acquired Meridian for $8 million. I got a separate 5-year licensing agreement for CoreLink worth $14 million, not 12. I became VP of Technology for the entire Southwestern region, reporting directly to Walter. My team got protection contracts with raises. I retained all intellectual property rights with ironclad protections, and I had multiple exit clauses if Titan ever violated the terms. Brandon Kowalski pled guilty to computer sabotage and fraud. He got 18 months in federal prison, 3 years probation, and was ordered to pay restitution. His career was over. Harold Brennan settled all civil claims. He lost most of his retirement payout. But at least he owned what he had done wrong, and I got my company back, on better terms than I had ever imagined. 3 months after Brandon's arrest, I stood in my new office at Titan's Southwestern Regional Headquarters in Denver. Glass walls, modern furniture, a view of the Rocky Mountains. My title was engraved on a nameplate, Cassie Reynolds, Vice President of Technology, Southwest Region. It still felt surreal. My team had grown from 12 people to 38. We were implementing CoreLink across 7 Titan facilities: Phoenix, Albuquerque, Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, Tucson, El Paso, and Flagstaff. Each location had unique needs, different workflows, specific challenges. It was exactly the kind of work I loved: complex, meaningful, collaborative. Jason was now my Chief Operating Officer. He owned 8% of CoreLink Systems, my new LLC. Sarah had transferred to Denver to run our training division. We had hired her wife, Amanda, as our HR director. Marcus, the security guard who had apologized while escorting me out of Meridian, now headed our entire cybersecurity division. Everyone who had stood by me during the crisis had been rewarded. The results were impressive. Efficiency improvements averaged 52% across all facilities. Titan's Southwest region went from being one of their worst-performing divisions to their best. Revenue was up, customer satisfaction was up, employee retention was up. Walter called me every week to discuss strategy. He was already talking about expanding CoreLink to Titan's Midwest and Northwest regions. I was making more money than I had ever imagined. I had genuine authority. I was building something meaningful. By every external measure, I had won completely. But I still woke up sometimes thinking about that day Brandon fired me. The humiliation of being escorted out, the betrayal in Harold's averted eyes, the fear that I might lose everything I had built. Those memories did not fade just because the outcome was good. "You doing okay?" Jason asked, appearing in my doorway with coffee. "Yeah. Just thinking about how different things could have been if I had not documented everything. If I had trusted corporate promises instead of insisting on contracts. If I had backed down when Brandon pressured me." Jason sat down. "But you did not. That is why we are here." He was right. The contracts I insisted on, the intellectual property protection I fought for, the boundaries I set even when they made me seem difficult, all of that had saved me. If I had been more accommodating, more flexible, more willing to trust that things would work out, I would have lost everything. My phone rang. Unknown California number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Miss Reynolds? This is Madison Sterling. I am the CEO of Apex Technologies. I was hoping we could talk." Apex Technologies. I knew the name. Silicon Valley firm, enterprise software, big money. "What can I do for you?" "I have been following your story. The Meridian situation, your contract with Titan, the work you are doing with CoreLink. I am very impressed. I would like to discuss a potential partnership. Would you be willing to meet?" "What kind of partnership?" "The kind that would make you very wealthy." "Fly to San Francisco. Let me show you what I am thinking. All expenses paid, obviously. No obligation." I almost said no, but curiosity got the better of me. "When? How about next Tuesday?" 1 week later, I was in Palo Alto, sitting in Apex headquarters. The building was sleek glass and steel, full of young people in expensive casual clothes, the air humming with the energy of tech money. Madison Sterling was in her early 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of confidence that comes from closing billion-dollar deals. "CoreLink is remarkable," she said, pulling up a presentation. "You built something that solves real problems for mid-sized distribution companies, but you are only using it in 7 locations. I want to put it in 7,000 companies." She showed me market analysis. The enterprise operations software market was worth $11 billion annually. CoreLink could capture significant market share. Apex wanted to buy it outright, turn it into a cloud-based platform, subscription model, scale it across industries. "Our offer is $48 million, Madison said, "plus a 5-year consulting contract at $2 million annually. Total package, $58 million. You would be wealthy beyond your dreams. You could retire at 40 if you wanted." I stared at the number on the screen. $48 million. For something I built in my spare time 6 years ago, it was almost impossible to comprehend. "What happens to my team?" I asked. "We would hire key people. Others would transition to new positions. Standard acquisition process." "What about current clients?" "Titan. New licensing terms. Probably price increases. We would need to maximize revenue." "What about customization for specific industries?" Madison smiled. "We would standardize. One platform, maximum market reach. That is how you scale." I nodded slowly. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But don't think too long. This offer won't stay on the table forever." I flew back to Denver and spent 2 days wrestling with the decision. $48 million. Financial security for the rest of my life. Recognition on a massive scale. Everything I had worked for, validated in the biggest possible way. But something felt wrong. I talked to Jason. That is incredible money, Cass. Life-changing. You should take it. I talked to Sarah. What would happen to our team? I talked to Marcus. I have had 6 jobs in my career. This is the first one where I felt like I mattered, where people knew my name, where the work I did made a real difference to real people. I talked to Emma, who knew me better than anyone. What do you want? She asked. Not what makes sense financially. Not what is the smart business move. What do you actually want? I thought about that question for a long time. Then I called Madison Sterling. I am declining your offer, I said. There was a pause. You are turning down $48 million. I am. May I ask why? Because what you want to do with CoreLink is not what I want to do with it. You want to scale it, standardize it, maximize profit. That is fine. That is good business. But I built CoreLink to solve specific problems for specific people. The customization is not a bug. It is the feature. And I do not want to turn it into just another enterprise software platform that treats every company the same. You are choosing purpose over profit. I am choosing to build something meaningful on my own terms. Madison was quiet for a moment. That is either very wise or very foolish. I genuinely do not know which. Neither do I admitted. But it is my choice to make. I hung up and sat in my office, looking out at the mountains. I had just turned down more money than most people see in a lifetime. But I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The next day, I approached Walter with a proposal. Spin CoreLink into a separate company. Joint venture, I would own 60%, Titan would own 40%. I would be CEO. We would focus on mid-sized businesses like Meridian used to be. Personalized implementation, relationship-driven service, sustainable growth instead of explosive scale. Profit sharing for my entire team. Walter looked at the proposal for a long time. Then he smiled. You know, most people in your position would have taken the Silicon Valley money and run. I am not most people. No, you are definitely not. He signed the agreement. 6 months after being fired from Meridian, CoreLink Systems LLC officially launched as an independent company. 38 employees, all with equity stakes. 7 active clients through Titan. 5 more in the implementation pipeline. Annual revenue of $8 million and growing steadily. I was making good money. Not Silicon Valley money, but more than enough. More importantly, I owned my time. I owned my work. I owned my integrity. I built the company culture I wanted. Collaborative, respectful, focused on doing excellent work for people who appreciated it. Every single person on my team knew they mattered. Their voices were heard. Their contributions were valued. No one would ever fire them on a whim and demand they hand over controls to something they built. We worked hard. We celebrated successes. We learned from failures. We treated clients like partners. We treated each other like family. And we built something that was genuinely good. 1 year after Brandon fired me, I got an email that made me stop and stare at my screen. The sender was Patricia Herrera. She owned a small manufacturing company in Tucson that made custom furniture for restaurants and hotels. 75 employees, $20 million in annual revenue. Growing fast but struggling with operations. I heard about CoreLink from Walter Gaines, her email said. He told me your story. About being fired. About fighting back. About building your own company. I am in exactly the position you were in 6 years ago. Overwhelmed by growth, drowning in inefficient systems, not sure how to scale without losing quality. Can we talk? I drove to Tucson the following week. Patricia's facility was in an industrial area south of downtown. When I walked in, I saw my 28-year-old self in her eyes. The hope, the vision, the exhaustion of building something from nothing. She showed me around. Skilled craftspeople building beautiful pieces, orders piling up, inventory chaos, scheduling nightmares, customer service overwhelmed. All the same problems Meridian had 6 years ago. I need help, Patricia said simply. But I need to know I am working with someone who understands what it is like to build something and be afraid of losing it. I understand, I said. Better than you know. We signed a contract 3 weeks later. CoreLink Systems would implement a customized version of the platform for her company. 12-month rollout, training for her entire staff, ongoing support, fair terms, clear ownership boundaries, mutual respect. Working with Patricia reminded me why I loved this work. It was not about the biggest contracts or the most impressive clients. It was about helping people who were building something real, solving actual problems, making their lives and their businesses better. That project led to 3 more referrals: a craft brewery in Albuquerque, a medical supply distributor in El Paso, a specialty food importer in Phoenix. Each one was a mid-sized business with passionate owners, dedicated employees, and operational chaos that CoreLink could solve. We grew carefully, hired slowly, chose clients deliberately. By the end of the year, we had 12 active clients, 45 employees, 14 million in annual revenue. We were profitable, sustainable, and everyone who worked for us was genuinely happy to be there. But I never forgot where I came from. Every new employee, on their first day, I told them the same thing. Everything you create here, you get credit for. Every idea you have, we will listen to. Every boundary you set, we will respect. And if anyone ever tries to take what is yours, I will be the first one standing beside you. I meant every word. One afternoon, I hired a young developer named Amy Chen. She was 26, brilliant with code, completely underconfident in her abilities. She reminded me of myself at that age. During her interview, she apologized 3 times for asking questions. She prefaced every opinion with, "This might be stupid," but she was terrified of being too much, too difficult, too opinionated. On her first day, I sat down with her in my office. "Amy, let me tell you a story," I said. And I told her everything. About building CoreLink, about Meridian, about Brandon firing me and demanding I hand over the controls, about fighting back, about nearly losing everything, about building this company on my own terms. Her eyes filled with tears. "You really did that. I really did. And I am telling you this because I need you to understand something. Your ideas matter. Your voice matters. Your boundaries matter. You do not have to apologize for taking up space or asking questions or protecting your work. Those are not flaws. They are strengths. I have always been told I need to be more agreeable," Amy said quietly. "Agreeable is fine. But agreeable should never mean letting people take advantage of you. There is a difference between being collaborative and being a doormat. Learn that difference early. It will save you so much pain." Amy became one of our best developers. Within 6 months, she built a new module for CoreLink that improved reporting efficiency by 37%. She put her name on it. She presented it at our company meeting. She stood up and owned what she created. Watching her grow reminded me that this was about more than just my success. It was about creating a space where other people could succeed too, where they could build things and protect them, where they did not have to choose between being respected and being liked. The business grew. CoreLink Systems expanded to 20 clients, then 30. We opened a second office in Austin. Annual revenue hit $28 million. Investors started calling, offering to fund massive expansion. I turned them all down. We grew at the pace we wanted, in the direction we chose, with the values we refused to compromise. Walter stayed on as a mentor and advisor. He and I became genuine friends. He would call sometimes just to talk strategy, to work through problems, to celebrate wins. "You know what I respect most about you," he said once. "You know what you want. Most people do not. They know what they think they should want, what other people expect them to want. But you actually know what matters to you. That is rare." I thought about that a lot. What did I want? I wanted meaningful work. I wanted to treat people well. I wanted to build something sustainable. I wanted autonomy. I wanted respect. I wanted to look in the mirror and be proud of who I was and what I was building. None of that required $48 million from Silicon Valley. None of it required explosive growth or maximum scale. It just required clarity about my values and the courage to protect them. Sometimes I wondered what my life would look like if I had not built CoreLink. If I had just been a regular employee without the leverage of ownership, Brandon would have fired me, and that would have been it. No negotiation, no fighting back, just unemployment and betrayal and moving on. The only thing that saved me was preparation. The contracts I insisted on, the documentation I maintained, the intellectual property I protected. I did all of that before I knew I would need it. I did it because it was the right thing to do, because protecting your work is never wrong, even when people tell you you are being difficult. That lesson was worth more than any amount of money. 2 years after Brandon fired me, CoreLink Systems hosted its first annual company retreat. We rented a resort outside Sedona, brought all 58 employees, encouraged people to bring partners and families. It was 3 days of team building, strategy planning, celebrating successes, and just enjoying being together. On the second night, we had a company dinner on an outdoor terrace overlooking the red rocks. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange and red. People were laughing, telling stories, genuinely happy to be there together. Walter flew in to join us. He stood to make a toast. "I have been in business for 34 years, he said. "I have seen thousands of companies, worked with hundreds of founders. Most of them focus on growth above everything else. Bigger, faster, more. Cassie is different. She focuses on better work, better relationships, better culture. And you know what? Better turns out to be a pretty good business strategy." He raised his glass. "To Cassie, who taught me that integrity is not just good ethics, it is good business." Everyone cheered. I felt my eyes sting with tears, the good kind. Then it was my turn to speak. I stood up, looking around at all these people who had chosen to build something with me. Jason, who had risked his job to keep me informed during the crisis. Sarah, who had moved states to stay on my team. Marcus, who had found a career that valued him. Amy, who no longer apologized for being smart. So many others, each with their own story of how they ended up here. 2 years ago, I said, I was fired. I was escorted out of a building I had helped build, by people I had trusted. Someone wanted to erase me, to take what I created, to pretend I did not matter. I paused, feeling the weight of that memory. It was the worst day of my professional life. I was terrified. I was hurt. I was so angry I could barely think straight. But I had one thing going for me. I had protected my work. I had documentation. I had contracts. I had boundaries. And when they tried to cross those boundaries, I had the leverage to fight back. I looked at Walter. A very smart businessman taught me that fighting back is not about revenge. It is about justice. It is about protecting what is yours. It is about making sure that people cannot profit from stealing your work. I looked back at my team. So I fought. And I won. But winning does not just mean getting money or keeping control. It means building something that reflects your values, something you are proud of, something that treats people the way you want to be treated. I raised my glass. We built this company on a foundation of respect. We protect each other's work. We celebrate each other's ideas. We set boundaries and honor them. We choose sustainable growth over explosive scale. We choose relationships over transactions. We choose integrity over convenience. A year ago, someone offered me $48 million for CoreLink. I turned it down. Not because I don't like money, but because I like this better. I like working with people I respect. I like building something meaningful. I like owning my time and my choices. I like looking in the mirror and being proud of what I see. My voice got thick with emotion. 2 years ago, someone tried to take everything from me. Instead, they gave me the best gift anyone ever has. They showed me what I was capable of. They showed me I could fight. They showed me I could build something entirely my own. They showed me I did not need their approval or their permission or their company to be successful. So thank you all for being part of this journey. Thank you for believing in something different. Thank you for choosing better over bigger. Thank you for being the kind of people who make this work worth doing. Everyone stood and cheered. People were crying, including me. It felt like a moment of pure gratitude, pure connection, pure recognition that we had built something real together. Later that night, I stood on my balcony looking at the stars. Emma found me there. She had flown in for the retreat, even though she did not work for CoreLink. "Best friends show up. That was a beautiful speech," she said. "I meant every word." "I know you did. That is why it was beautiful. She leaned against the railing. Do you ever regret turning down the Apex money? Sometimes I wonder what that life would look like. But no, I do not regret it. What do you think you would tell your 28-year-old self if you could go back to the moment you first built Core Link? I thought about that. I would tell her to be even more careful with contracts, to document even more thoroughly, to trust her instincts when something feels wrong, to set boundaries earlier and enforce them harder. That is it. No, I would also tell her that being difficult is not the same thing as being wrong, that protecting your work is not selfish, that asking for what you are worth is not greedy, that fighting back when someone tries to take advantage of you is not unprofessional. It is necessary. Emma nodded. You have come a long way. We both have. We stood there in comfortable silence, two women who had built lives on their own terms, who had learned the hard way that niceness without boundaries is just weakness in disguise. The next day, our last at the retreat, I announced something new. CoreLink Systems was launching a mentorship program. We would work with women in tech, particularly those in their 20s and 30s, to help them understand intellectual property protection, contract negotiation, and business ownership. We would teach them the things I had to learn the hard way. No one should have to go through what I went through, I said. No one should be blindsided by betrayal because they trusted too easily. We are going to teach the next generation how to protect themselves, how to own their work, how to build careers that cannot be taken away. The program launched 3 months later. We had 60 applicants for 12 spots. The women we selected were brilliant, ambitious, and often undervalued. We taught them everything: copyrights, patents, licensing agreements, contract negotiation, equity structures, intellectual property law, but we also taught them something harder: how to advocate for themselves without apologizing, how to set boundaries without feeling guilty, how to be respected instead of just liked. Amy led the program. Watching her teach these younger women the lessons she had learned was one of the most satisfying things I had ever witnessed. She was confident now, clear about her worth, unwilling to be diminished. That was the legacy I wanted to build. Not just a successful company, but a culture that taught people to value themselves, to protect their work, to fight back when necessary, to build lives and careers that could not be taken away by someone else's ambition or deception. 3 years after being fired, I stood in my office in downtown Phoenix. We had moved back from Denver, opened a headquarters in the city where everything started. The office was modern and bright, with glass walls and collaborative spaces and photos of my team covering an entire wall. CoreLink Systems now had 87 employees across 3 locations. We had 45 active clients in 7 states. Annual revenue had reached $39 million. We were profitable, sustainable, and growing at exactly the pace we chose. More importantly, everyone who worked here was genuinely happy. We measured that. Annual surveys, regular check-ins, open-door policies. People felt valued. They felt heard. They felt like their work mattered. That morning, I got an email from a woman named Teresa Gonzalez. She owned a small logistics company in San Antonio. The email subject line said, "You don't know me, but you saved my career." I opened it, curious. Teresa explained that she had been in a situation similar to mine 5 years earlier. She had built proprietary routing software for the company she worked for. When she asked for equity or licensing rights, they fired her and tried to claim the software was theirs. She fought back, but barely. She had not documented properly. Her contracts were vague. She ended up in a 2-year legal battle that drained her savings and nearly destroyed her mentally. "Then I heard your story," she wrote, "about how you protected CoreLink with contracts and documentation, about how you fought back when they tried to take it, about how you built your own company afterward. It made me realize I was not crazy for fighting. I was not difficult for protecting my work. I was right. I eventually won my case, but barely. Now I have my own company. And I do everything the way you did it. Contracts, documentation, boundaries. I even started a program in San Antonio teaching other women in tech how to protect their intellectual property. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for winning. Thank you for talking about it publicly. You gave me permission to value myself. I sat at my desk and cried. Not sad tears, grateful tears. Because that email reminded me why all of this mattered. It was not just about me. It was about changing the culture that tells women to be agreeable, to not make waves, to trust that things will work out if they just work hard enough. That culture is a lie. Hard work without protection is just vulnerability. Trust without documentation is just naivety, I replied to Teresa. We scheduled a call. Within a month, we were collaborating on a joint mentorship program between Phoenix and San Antonio, teaching women to protect their work, negotiate their worth, build careers they controlled. The ripples kept spreading. That afternoon, I got another email. This one from Harold Brennan. I had not heard from him in almost 2 years. My finger hovered over the delete button. But curiosity won. Dear Cassie, he wrote, I do not expect you to read this, and I certainly do not expect a response. But I need you to know that getting fired as your CEO was the best thing that ever happened to me, not because I wanted it, but because I needed it. I have spent the last 3 years in therapy, working through why I made the choices I made, why I let ambition override integrity, why I betrayed someone who trusted me, why I valued a comfortable retirement more than doing the right thing. I volunteer now at a small business development center. I teach ethics to new entrepreneurs. I tell them about you, about what I did, about what it cost, everyone involved. I tell them that short-term convenience is never worth long-term shame. I am not asking for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I wanted you to know that your fight changed me. Watching you refuse to back down, watching you build something better, watching you succeed with integrity taught me more than 30 years in business ever did. I am proud of what you have built, and I am sorry for what I tried to take from you. With respect and regret, Harold. I read the email 3 times. I felt complicated things, anger that still existed, sadness for what our relationship used to be, but also something else, recognition that people can change, that consequences can teach, that someone who hurt you badly can still learn and grow, even if you are never friends again. I did not reply to Harold, but I did not delete the email either. I saved it in a folder called Lessons Learned, because that is what all of this was. A series of lessons learned through fire and failure and fighting back. I learned that your worth is not determined by who employs you. It is determined by what you create and how you protect it. I learned that boundaries are not mean. They are necessary. I learned that fighting back is not about revenge. It is about justice. I learned that success is not about the biggest number. It is about building something sustainable that reflects your values. I learned that being difficult is sometimes being right. I learned that accommodating everyone else is just another way of abandoning yourself. I learned that integrity is not just good ethics. It is good business. That evening, CoreLink Systems hosted a company meeting. We celebrated hitting our 3-year milestone. We announced profit-sharing bonuses. We recognized employee achievements. We talked about goals for the next year. At the end, I asked everyone, what did you learn this year? People shared. Amy talked about learning to advocate for her ideas without apologizing. Marcus talked about learning that his expertise was valuable. Sarah talked about learning to set boundaries with clients who demanded too much. Jason talked about learning that sustainable growth feels better than explosive growth. Then someone asked me, what did you learn, Cassie? I thought about it. I learned that 3 years ago, when Brandon tried to erase me, he actually gave me the greatest gift. He forced me to recognize my own power. He forced me to stop waiting for permission. He forced me to build something entirely my own, something no one can ever take away. I also learned that owning the controls is not just about technical systems. It is about owning your boundaries, your worth, your voice. It is about never handing over the power to define who you are and what you are capable of. I looked around the room at all these people who had chosen to build something different with me. We are doing something important here, not just building a profitable company, though we are doing that. We are building a model for how business can be different, respectful, sustainable, focused on people, not just profit. That matters more than any acquisition offer or revenue number. That night, I drove home through Phoenix. The city lights spread out below, familiar and beautiful. I thought about that moment 3 years ago when Brandon slid a termination letter across the table, when he demanded I hand over the controls, when I smiled and said I could not. I could not then because of contracts and ownership and intellectual property law. But I cannot now for a deeper reason. Because the controls are not just technical, they are personal. They are my boundaries, my worth, my voice, my power. They are everything I almost gave away by being too accommodating, too trusting, too afraid of being difficult. They are mine, completely and entirely mine, and I am never handing them over again. Not to someone who wants to fire me, not to someone who offers me millions to walk away, not to anyone who thinks my work, my ideas, my contributions can be erased or minimized or taken without consequence. I built something that matters. I protected it fiercely. I fought for it when fighting seemed impossible. And I won, not just legally, but morally. I won by refusing to let betrayal define me. I won by building something better. I won by choosing integrity over convenience every single time. The best revenge is not cruelty, it is success. It is building a life so good that the people who tried to destroy you become irrelevant. It is looking in the mirror and being proud of who you see. That is what I did. That is what I continue to do every single day. And if someone asked me now what I would say to a woman being fired, being betrayed, being told to hand over the controls to something she built, I would say this: know your worth before someone else tries to define it for you. Document everything. Protect your work, set boundaries and enforce them. Do not apologize for taking up space. Do not shrink to make others comfortable. And when they try to erase you, fight back with every tool you have. You are not difficult. You are not unreasonable. You are not greedy. You are valuable. Your work matters, and you deserve to own what you create. So own it, protect it, fight for it. Build something so good they cannot ignore you, so sustainable they cannot outlast you, so valuable they cannot replace you. Own the controls, all of them, and never, ever hand them over. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to fight to protect something you built? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself when everyone was telling you to back down? Share your story in the comments. I would love to hear how you protected what was yours. If this story resonated with you, please like this video. It helps more people find these stories of fighting back and winning. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories about betrayal, justice, and the courage it takes to own your worth. And share this with someone who needs to hear that protecting their work is not selfish. It is necessary. That being difficult is sometimes being right. That they have more power than they realize. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you recognize your own power. I hope it gives you permission to set boundaries without guilt. I hope it reminds you that your worth is not determined by who employs you, but by what you create and how fiercely you protect it. Stay strong, know your worth, and never hand over the controls.